Oh, okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, my brothers and sisters, we have only a few minutes before the salah. And we want to quickly talk about something that is very important, especially as we are entering the final 10. Now, my brothers and sisters, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted to the believer is their ability to do dua. Now, dua is, the scholars have described that as silahul mu'min, the weapon of the believer. And a dua is something that you have in which you can call on to the King of all kings without any middleman, without any intermediary. You can call on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. And this is calling on to the King of all kings. And subhanallah, if you only knew what that was, you would not be dependent on anyone else. If we look at the examples that we have of the scholars of the past, from the Salaf, we see that some of them, they used to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the milh, for the salt on their food. They used to be so connected and dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they used to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something as simple and basic as salt. We know in the narration, in the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, ask Allah for everything, for anything that you need. Even for the shisr, the shoelace, إِذَا انْقَطَعَ. If the shoelace was to break, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mend it. Now when you come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this way, you are saying, Ya Allah, I am your slave and you are my Lord. I am dependent upon you. I am a slave and I need you, Ya Allah. You are giving Allah respect because you're saying, in me there is no hawl, no quwwah. But all of the hawl and the quwwah is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. All of the might and all of that which has the ability to change, all of it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You yourself, you are a slave that is weak. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-qawi. He is the all-powerful. So now your dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to reflect this imbalance. That you don't have any power within yourself and all of it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now someone, especially in Ramadan, you're making dua. And so someone says, I make dua, I make dua, I make dua. Ma fi ijaba. Nothing happens. There's no response. And we say that this is impossible. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call unto me, I will respond. Impossible, there is no response. But the response of Allah comes in one of three ways. Either you are granted what you want, and so you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something and bam, it's there. Alhamdulillah. The second is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your dua is removing harm that was for you. He removes it because of your dua. And He changes your path accordingly. And so this is a removal of an obstacle because of your dua. And this, we have to understand, comes from the fact that dua is ibadah. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds through your dua in a way that you don't understand. And then the third way that Allah responds to your dua is not in this dunya, it's in the akhirah. And if you look at all of these scenarios, a Muslim never loses. A believer never loses while making dua. You're either going to get it, you're either going to be saved from something, or you're either going to get the reward yawm al-qiyamah. What more do you want? So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ud'u Allah. Call on to Allah. وَأَنْتُمْ مُوقِنُونَ بِالْإِجَابَةِ. And that you are certain of a response. This is the way that a Muslim is supposed to live. That they understand that Allah is al-Mujib. That Allah is the one who answers the call. So call on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this way. بارك الله فيكم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. جزاكم الله خيرا. Inshallah we'll see you guys next week.